Pere, 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 pere. Pere, 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 pere. Gotcha.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Crap Café. Today, we're going to be getting to the bottom of one of the many unanswered questions left scattered throughout the series. And if you've been a longtime fan, then you've probably already grown accustomed to this happening time and time again. But there was one unanswered question in Wano that particularly piqued my interest. The heritage of the Tobiropo siblings, Ulti in page 1. While the young Oni stole the hearts of many One Piece fans and quickly became fan favorites, Oda left sizable portions of their backstory surrounded in mystery. But he did at least leave us with a single clue, that in typical Oda fashion, only left more questions than answers. But if we can crack this puzzle, I think we could not only unearth their backstories, but also explain the catalyst behind one of Kaido's most infamous battles, and link them to an often forgotten character that has recently been reappearing in the background of the manga. So buckle up and get ready for a theory that will completely redefine how you look at some of the best side characters in the series. But first, we'll need to crack open this One Piece paternity test and see if we can figure out an answer in regards to their mysterious father. So let's begin this theory by analyzing all of the information we received during Wano, starting with their origins. According to Kaido, he took Ulti in page 1 under his wing back when they were only just children, and he mentions that he only did so because he was familiar with their father. And this is what initially set off my theory senses, because Kaido has been a powerhouse in the pirate world ever since his time as a rookie, so this would imply that Ulti in page 1's biological father was also some sort of big shot pirate. So just who exactly could this character possibly be? Well, if we examine what we know about Ulti in page 1's past and combine it with what we know about Kaido's past, then I think we can make a few insightful observations. So let's begin by understanding a bit more about the Tobiropo siblings. Ulti in page 1 were born 22 and 20 years ago, and while we were never told where they were born, I think it's clear that it had to be on or around Wano, as they were only around 8 and 6 years old when they joined Kaido's crew, and they didn't even get their devil fruits until sometime after they were taken under his wing. So the only reasonable way for the two orphans to have ever encountered Kaido at his headquarters on Onigashima would have been for them to have been born on or around the island of Wano, as there's no way two children without devil fruits would have ever been able to climb the mountains and waterfalls of Wano all on their own. And the last piece of significant evidence we have pertaining to the siblings is that they both belong to the recently defined giant subclass of Oni. In fact, many of Kaido's crew seem to be descendants of that same race, as you can tell from their signature horns. For some time, without an official name, the community was calling these horned giants ancient giants, and while it's still entirely possible for them to be the ancient progenitors of the giant race, we learned from Kaido that these people are apparently called Oni. And based on his conversations with Yamato, it seems that like many of the other races in the One Piece world, they don't have a very good history with humans, and are now all part of a slowly dying race. In fact, when you keep this in mind and think back to the composition of Kaido's crew, I think it becomes clear that he shows favor to those of his own rare Oni heritage. And notable members of his crew, such as Black Maria, the Numbers, and our troublesome Tobiropo siblings are all members of this Oni race. So with all of our circumstantial evidence laid out, it would appear that we're looking for a pirate who belongs to the race of Oni and was on or around Wano circa 22 years ago. And depending on how familiar you are with the history of Wano, this answer may shock you, because we actually know of an Oni who was in the land of Wano until right around the time of Ulti in page 1's birth. Someone with a known history with Kaido and currently despised by the people of Wano for looting the grave of their national hero. That's right, I believe that there's a great chance that the former warlord Gekko Moria is the long-lost father of page 1 and Ulti. Ever since Moria was first introduced, Oda has been tying him directly to both Kaido and Wano Kuni. We first learned Moria spent time in Wano when we encountered the zombified version of the famed sword god Ryuma, and his presence directly implied that Moria had at least visited Wano Kuni for some time in order to have looted his corpse. Additionally, we were also filled in on some of the details surrounding his past dealings with the Emperor Kaido in the New World. and how he annihilated the entirety of Moria's former crew, scarring him for life and leading him to form his zombie crew on Thriller Bark. Now, at the time of release, these details didn't necessarily seem related, and many One Piece fans brushed it off as random exposition from a less than thrilling villain. But fast forward a few hundred chapters later, we found out that Kaido has actually been in control of the land of Wano since he defeated Moria roughly 20 years ago, meaning Oda was actually giving us key details in regards to the coming Wano arc over 15 years ahead. Not only did we learn about Moria's association with the land of Wano and Kaido early on into his introduction, but there was also another rather odd detail that Oda told us about Moria that until Wano made almost no sense. If you've been a fan of One Piece for as long as I have, you may remember that early on, Moria had a really weird classification for his race. While obviously now, we understand that his race is that of an Oni, which perfectly explains his horns and giant-like size. But at that point, the race was yet to really be established, and at the time, we were still calling them Ancient Giants, with the only confirmed members being Oars and Little Oars Jr., who were not only absolutely gigantic, but looked almost identical, meaning that they would end up becoming the template for what an ancient giant should look like in the eyes of the community. But Moria, however, was a separate case entirely, and the community really struggled to pin down his race. For one, he's incredibly tall, standing at 22 feet and 9 inches. And while that's remarkably impressive by human standards, it's actually quite short of the height of even the shortest giants, at around 12 meters or 39 feet. This confusion was enough that Oda eventually had to come out and give us an answer, and Gekko Moria was deemed an Onion human, which at the time made almost no sense, as he would have been the only known Onion human. But we just kind of accepted it and moved on. But now that we're further along in the series, it's clear that Oda was trolling, and what he really meant was that Gekko Moria was an Oni human. So now that we understand what Oda truly meant, I think we found our mystery father. He's an Oni with ties to both Wano and Kaido, and he was there around the time of the birth of Ulti in page 1. But outside of Moria perfectly aligning with the timeline and being a member of the same extraordinarily rare race, if Oda was truly planning this connection, then he would have also tied them together narratively, and there should be some sort of hint or allusion to the hidden theme. And not only did I discover this final piece of evidence, but once I did, everything fit together perfectly. And now, I know the full history that led up to Kaido and Moria's feud, and I even know where Oda is planning to take Moria now that we've entered the final saga. And the key to unraveling this mystery lies within Moria's current crew. I stated earlier that after his old crew was wiped out, and now potentially his infant daughter and son as well, Moria was completely scarred, and this is what led him to create a crew of zombie soldiers, so that way he would never have to feel the same trauma and loss ever again. But it isn't completely accurate to say that he has an entirely zombie crew, as he does have some notable living crewmates. First is the obvious one, Dr. Hogback, as his skills are required to build the zombies in the first place. Then there's the pervert Absalom, who at least serves as the head of the island security. And lastly, there's a rather odd ghost girl, who is seemingly doted on hand and foot, but serves almost no identifiable role on the crew whatsoever. Perona is a character that doesn't really stick out all that much the first time you watch Thriller Bark. She just seems like some sort of filler gag character that gets slapped out of existence at the midway point of the arc. But given that she's managed to stick around even so much to appear as recently as the Egghead Island arc, I think this may be a sign from Oda that there is going to be more coming from her character. And interestingly enough, the last time we saw her, she was attempting to rescue Moria from Blackbeard's island. In fact, this has basically been her entire goal since the time skip began, when she first stated that she planned to reunite with Moria. And despite the fact that she hasn't seen him in the last 2 years, her loyalty and love for him clearly hasn't faded. But what exactly is their relationship? When you start to think about it, Perona doesn't really serve a role on Moria's crew. She's basically just hanging out, living every young ghost girl's dream. She has a collection of living stuffed animals that obey her every command. She has an entire playground just outside of her room for tea parties and playdates. Even her bedroom is gorgeous. Seemingly, Moria has given her every single thing she could possibly ask for. Their relationship despite its unusual appearance, is actually one of a doting father and his precious daughter. Perona even states on multiple occasions that she loves Moria as a father figure, and that's why she's been so determined to get back to him. And based on their timeline, that would make a lot of sense, as she spent over a decade in his care. We know this because when Moria first recruited Hogback to build his zombie army, Perona was already traveling at his side by the time she was 13 years old, and could easily have been with him for several years prior based on the huge gaps in his established timeline. But once we add in our new information, this odd yet charming relationship takes on a whole new light. I think it's clear that Perona is yet another replacement among Moria's faux crew, and she is filling the void left from his missing daughter. And I can see why, because Perona and Ulti actually happen to look and act almost exactly the same. Of course, for the most part, women in One Piece are usually just clones of Nami with a few color swaps and the exact same figure. But despite most of them sharing a cup size, there is one aspect in which Oda clearly takes pride in differentiating his female characters, and that is through their hairstyles. While it often goes unnoticed, Oda actually takes great care to give important female characters a unique hairstyle to represent them and set them apart from the rest. So it may come as a shock for you to learn that Ulti and Perona are two of only a handful of characters that share the same hairstyle, with the both of them sporting bangs. But the connections don't end there, as they also share the same blood type. Now, obviously, I'm not claiming that there's any direct relation between the two, but blood types, along with birthdays and favorite foods, are one of the many writing devices that Oda uses to make his characters feel like they have a genuine will of their own. You see, in Japan, people with the same blood types are thought to share personality traits, somewhat like a zodiac or astrological sign, and that couldn't be any more accurate for these two. Perona and Ulti are both desperate to be spoiled and quick to anger. It's no wonder why the heartbroken Moria would have been so quick to adopt her. She's the spitting image of his baby girl. So, refusing to let the opportunity of a second chance with his daughter go to waste, he made sure to give Perona everything that little creepy ghost girl could ask for. And it's clear that despite his unsavory appearance, he did everything right as a father, as Perona still loves him and remains loyal to him to this day. And when she saw the fake report from the Navy about Moria's death, she was completely distraught. But since the moment she found out that he's still alive, she's done everything that she can to get back in contact with him. But what's really interesting is that Ulti is also just as much of a daddy's girl, but for Kaido. She's as loyal as they come, even going so far as to almost kill Nami for saying that anyone other than Kaido would become king of the pirates. Which, funny enough, is something that I can't see Perona doing for Moria in return. But what's really unfortunate is how much these two clearly suffer without each other, as Perona was willing to rob him blind and abandon him in his darkest hour. And Ulti is willing to die for Kaido at any moment, despite the fact that he has never treated her a tenth as well as Moria has treated Perona. Even when we look at the story told to us about how Kaido saved Page 1 and Ulti, it's clear that they've been scraping by their whole lives. Kaido told us that he brought them in after he found them. But that's as far as his kindness extended, because after that moment, he really never did anything for them again. As Ulti mentioned, she had to steal the Dova fruits that she and Page 1 currently possess in order for them to even survive being in Kaido's ruthless crew, and hopefully gain the strength to prove their worth to him, either to receive some sort of affection and attention, or possibly just to repay him for taking them in. Of course, Ulti isn't the only one with a Thriller Bark clone, and I think it's clear that Page 1 and Absalom also share a remarkable amount of similarities. But we don't like to hype up Absalom on this channel, so I'll just leave that there. But looking forwards in the story, now that Kaido is missing in action, what will Ulti and Page 1 do? It's possible they'll remain loyal to Kaido and await his possible return, but I don't think they'll be as determined to return to their neglectful adoptive father as Perona has been to reunite with Moria. So far, she's managed to make it through most of the New World alone in order to infiltrate Hachinosu and free him. And as of right now, we still don't know whether or not she succeeded, but if she did, then for the first time since the birth of his children, Moria will be back in the seas near Wano. And now, coincidentally, Ulti and Page 1 also have a good chance of being in that same area. as since Kaido has disappeared and been presumed dead, the siblings really no longer have any ties to the kingdom of Wano. So if they disembark the island to begin their own adventure, there's a good chance they could reunite with their father Moria. Of course, it's also entirely possible that they just keep sailing right on by, like Chiffon and Pound. But given that Ulti and Page 1 are the most popular Tobiropo, they do have the highest chances of a reappearance in the story. So what will happen if Moria can reunite with his long-lost children? Is there any chance that the young beast that he used to be in his youth will reawaken? Well, in order to know for sure, we just need to get to the bottom of the last mystery regarding Moria's past, his battle with Kaido. Because since it was set up in Thriller Bark, the details surrounding their dispute have remained hidden. But I think we have just enough information now to understand the full story. Typically, when Oda alludes to some sort of hidden past, it eventually becomes relevant again for the story, and I was very much looking forward to learning more about what led up to Moria's battle with Kaido and Wano Kuni. But after the Wano arc came and went, I was personally left a little confused as to why Oda had built up this past and history with Kaido and Wano if it was never going to be revealed in the story. Of course, there's many things that Oda has planned but simply won't have time to tell in the story. In fact, this channel is kinda dedicated to finding these hidden gems. But thankfully, even if Oda doesn't have time to go into detail, he usually makes sure to leave us with enough clues to discover his intended path. And in the case of Kaido versus Moria, I think that if we combine what we've just discovered about their entangled history with what was established in Thriller Bark and Wano, we can neatly put this untold story together perfectly, and answer what the two of them were doing together on Wano to begin with, what caused their battle, and how and why Moria was split up from his children. Let's start from the top and see if we can narrow down what the two of them are doing together on Wano. Because given the amount of former captains and Onis he has in his crew, it would have made far more sense for Kaido to have attempted to recruit Moria before he would have ever tried to wipe him out. Interestingly enough, there is one consistent theme throughout the Wano arc that never got paid off, that adds a lot of context to their interactions. Throughout the Wano arc, we were inundated with multiple team-ups and alliances, from the Samurai Pirate Mink alliance to Kaido's own alliance with Big Mom. And alongside these many team-ups, Oda time and time again made sure to have multiple characters reference the fact that pirate alliances always end in betrayal. And due to this repeated trope, many fans were expecting a betrayal from either Law or even Big Mom in order to pay off what Oda had repeatedly set up. However, by the end of the arc, neither of the alliances experiences any kind of betrayal or turmoil. Big Mom and Kaido were practically buried beside each other, immortalizing their union, and even the Samurai Pirate Mink alliance went off without a hitch. So what was the point of this repeated notion, and what known alliance went sour? Well, I think that there's a good chance that when Kaido met the Riki Moria full of potential and ambition, that he would have attempted to recruit him to his crew. I mean, hell, he even showed up wearing the right outfit. And when you remember that Oden was already back on Wano by this point in the story, it gives even more weight to the notion that Kaido would have wanted to add the Riki Moria's strength to his crew. And I also have a feeling that Moria would have accepted Kaido's offer. But he is exactly the kind of untrustworthy pirate that would betray an alliance. And when you examine the rest of Moria's actions in Wano, then I think we can draw a perfect through line and figure out exactly why Moria would have accepted Kaido's offer in bad faith, and what he hoped to gain from their Oni alliance. I think Moria accepted Kaido's offer to join as he entered Wano Kuni, but only did so that he could act freely within his territory and acquire as much strength as possible, similar to what happened with Blackbeard and the world government. We already know for a fact that while Moria was on Wano, he looted the grave of their national hero, the sword god Ryuma, stealing both his precious blade Shusui and the body of the ancient warrior. But why would Moria take Ryuma's body as well? Even if he had his devil fruit at that point, he can only create zombies with the help of Dr. Hogback, no? Well, I think this is a common misconception, and while Hogback is necessary for the restoration of severely decomposed bodies and adding augmentations to enhance their strength, Moria still seems fully capable of creating his Morias from fresh corpses as well, like we saw him do with the Marines who perished during the Marineford War. In fact, I think that the only way for Moria to have gotten the powerful zombie crew that he currently has would be for him to have been collecting and storing the bodies of powerful warriors since he began his pirate career. because Ryuma is not the only notable historical figure that he has on board his crew, and his general zombies include the likes of Captain John, Silver Axe, and many other strong warriors. All of these people should have been either scattered throughout the Grand Line or recovered from Hachinosu just before he arrived on Wano, as it's unlikely he could have collected these bodies after he was crushed by Kaido. So if Moria was already building the precursor to his zombie crew while his living one was still active, then there's really just one question left. When did Moria find Oars? Because if he found him before he arrived at Wano, or possibly even somewhere on the island, then I think we can finally understand the full picture behind everything that happened between Kaido and Moria. And believe it or not, but I think Oda gave us a rough idea of what happened back in Thriller Bark. Because if Moria had already found Oars' corpse and had plans to develop a zombie army, then from the moment he stepped foot on Wano, he would most likely have been looking for a strong shadow or subordinate to use to inhabit Oars' gigantic body. And who could possibly be a better shadow for Oars than the Oni Kaido himself? I believe that if Moria allied with Kaido in order to get close enough to steal his shadow to later implant into Oars, then everything fits together almost too perfectly. First, this explains why Kaido would have ever turned on one of his fellow Oni in the first place, as if Moria betrayed his trust and forced his hand. Annihilating Moria and his scheming crew sounds like a proper course of action. But despite the unsavory actions of Moria, I don't think Kaido would be willing to sacrifice the lives of 3 Onis for a single mistake. And this is why, after doing his best to kill Moria and seemingly knocking his jawline clean off, Kaido took Ulti and Page 1 from the battlefield to take under his wing once they were old enough to survive his crew. And Moria, after recovering from the battle, only to discover nothing but the lifeless bodies of all those he cared about, fell into a pit of despair. With the loss of his crew, his aspirations, and his family missing, Moria's spirit and willpower were completely crushed. This stopped his relentless growth in its tracks and brought on the era of stagnation that we find him in during Thriller Bark, where he feels content to simply hide from Kaido under the covers of the Florian Triangle's dense fog and moat. And instead of making himself the next king of the pirates, his lack of ambition leads him to build a zombie crew that can do the work for him and let them make him the next king of the pirates. And the only saving grace in his life was Perona, the little ghost girl he found shortly after his loss, that reminded him of the life he could have had with his daughter Ulti. So he does his utmost to give Perona the life he wished he could give to her, pampering Perona's every need and giving her all she asked for. And eventually, the day would come when Moria believed he had found another powerful shadow that could inhabit Oars, and learning from the last time, he made sure they were a little weaker this time round. Which brings us to the events of Thriller Bark, where Moria stole the shadow of Luffy. But just like the last time when Moria tried to steal the shadow of the man who dreamed of becoming Joy Boy, Moria and everything he had built would be destroyed once again. And to put a neat little bow on top, Oda made sure to have Luffy defeat Moria at the crack of dawn. And then over 700 chapters later, when we got to the arc that Oda was setting up over a dozen years ahead, Luffy would finally inherit Joy Boy's will and defeat Kaido, proving that he is the true sun god, tying every element of this theory together perfectly. So let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think we've cracked Moria's history with Kaido? And do you believe that Moria is the father of the Tobiropo siblings? And is there a chance of running into his long-lost children now that they're all in roughly the same area? Personally, with all of Moria's recent actions in the story, like pulling up on Blackbeard and the reveal of his Seraphim, Gekko, I'm really looking forward to seeing more from this new and improved Moria. Ever since he was defeated by Luffy and forced to re-enter the real world, he's began to reignite the fire he had in his youth. And if he really does encounter Page 1 and Ulti, I think that it could give him the closure and strength of will he'll need to compete in the final saga. So if you're as excited as I am to see where the story goes, make sure to hit that subscribe button to keep up with my upcoming videos. And if you liked the theory, or if it at least kept you entertained, then please make sure to hit that like button to let me know you enjoyed the video. But that's all I have for you today. Until next time, thank you for coming to the Crap Café.
Yeah.